Hello and welcome to the Third and Short Fantasy Show again. It's week 2. Me and Mark are back again, and this week we're going to be just going over a handful of potential high upside players that you'll get for a decent draft pick, and some potential risks as well that Mark's picked out, and we're going to just talk about them and see how that goes. How are you doing this week, Mark? I know you've had a pretty big draft going on for a dynasty league you're in that's actual pays cash money at the end of the year. Not to give too much away about it, but
this well, I'm not going to give too much. Yeah, this one's like an IDP league. It's deep. It's like 30 rounds deep. It's not snake, so it's a linear draft. So I'm picking number 7 every single round. But I'm really pleased with my team. I've got everybody. Yeah, you have to trade all over the place to get who you want. But I managed to trade and get Davante Adams. I managed to trade and get Trey Lance before the run on quarterback, second quarterbacks happened. It's a quarterback flex league. I managed to get Rondale Moore, who I traded up for. And apart from that, I've just got like a smattering of good talent. I'm not going to bore you with who I've got, but I'm really chuffed with my team. I think I stand a good chance with this.
So you getting excited for the football season at this point now? You've got a couple drafts on the go,
Yeah, I've got a couple of drafts on the go. This one's an IDP one, a defense. So you pick your defense, and an IDP you pick defenders. So I've just scattered loads of picks at first round defenders last year. So I've got Quitty P, I've got OE. I'm not going to let on who else I'm targeting and stuff like that, in case one of them's watching this stream. But yeah, and I've prioritized lots of rookie running backs with it being dynasty. I think I've got 3 rookie running backs to date. 4 maybe. So yeah, I'm just like prioritizing wide receivers and getting as many rookie running backs as I can with the aim that one of them's going to hit it off like Elijah Mitchell last year.
I mean that it's a good way to use your taxi squad, isn't it? The way that certain teams especially churn through running backs throughout a season. And sometimes you just have an unlucky season, don't you, where a bunch of people just go down one after another and you end up starting rookies.
Yeah, well, Dynasty is a bit like running a franchise. So the way I see it, if I was running a franchise and I was drafting, I would just bring in as many unrestricted free agent running backs and round 7 running backs as I could find and think, right, okay, let's just have a look at 8 years old because one of is going to make the field at some point. And that's kind of how I like to approach Dynasty. I get a couple of backs in the middle rounds who might tote the ball. We might talk about a few later. But ultimately, I just draft as many rookie running backs as I can find. Stash them on my taxi squad and think at some point one of yours is going to come good. One of yours is going to be Elijah Mitchell, or one of yours is going to be Aaron Jones, or one of these late round running back steals who makes a roster and does well, Or like was it Adrian Foster who played for the Houston Texans? And was NFL rushing leader for a couple of years in the row. He was an unrestricted rookie, unrestricted free agent rookie signing. So yeah, I've just peppered lots of them in here, thinking one of yours is going to come good,
Fair enough. I mean, that sounds like the strategy you've talked about with me before. It sounds like you're staying true to form. You don't deviate from that. But I mean, let's get into why we're actually what we came to do. Who is your first player to watch either as a risk or an upside this year?
Yeah, we'll talk about the risks first, and you've got the ADPs there. So the first player that I want to talk about as a risk is Derrick Henry. Now, as you can see, he's running back 6 in PPR, which means that if you're playing in a standard league, he's going to be going in the first round. Like Derrick Henry is going to be going in the first round. If you're in a dynasty league or you're in like a QB flex league, still might be going in the first round. People are going to be tempted to take him in the first round, but he's going to be going the start of the second round. And I'm going to tell you why it's a bit of a risk. So, as we all know, Derrick Henry last year started the game really well. He had over 180 yards in his second game against Seattle. Started off with maybe 5 or 6 100-yard games. For Derrick Henry's on for a big year. But there's 2 things that concern us. The first thing is his age and the amount of tread that's now on his tires. Derrick Henry is 28 years of age, and we've seen massive drop-off from second year second contract running backs, without an injury. In all honesty, you know what I mean? Like this is no, he was heavily used at Alabama. He's been heavily used by the Titans last few years. And I don't care who you are. I don't care how big you are. If you're 247 pounds or not, if you're getting hit 30 times a game, which he is, like by linebackers every time he touches the ball, your body's going to start breaking down. And we might have seen the start of that last year when he broke a bone in his foot. And I'm going to let you into a secret. Running backs use their feet a lot. You know what I mean? They've got to cut off them. They've got to jump off them. They've got to keep them moving. You know what I mean? It's not an injury. If next to a neck injury, I would say a foot injury is about the worst thing you can have for a running back. And yeah, I mean, look, if I'm not saying he's going to have a bad season, but I am saying if I was thinking about taking Henry in the first round, I would nice. And if there was a wide receiver there like Justin Jefferson, you had the choice between Justin Jefferson or Derrick Henry, or even Jamar Chase and Derrick Henry in round one in standard leagues, I'd be taking Justin Jefferson or I'd be taking Jamar Chase.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, a foot injury is not good, but it's not an Achilles. It's not an ACL. Like, it's not great. And his ADP is 14.5 right now. So that's, in most leagues, that's a second round pick, not a first round pick. So, I mean, when we've done a couple of drafts, he's fallen to the mid-second round. I'd still take him there. I know what you're saying. People are going to be tempted to take him round one, but I think you'll get away with it. It doesn't look like you're going to have to rush to take him in round one.
Yeah, I mean,
I know he's 28, but the guy spent 2 years as a backup when he got to the league, so that keeps you a bit more fresh than it does in other situations. Like Najee at 28 might be a bit worn out. He's not getting 2 years as a backup first. So I get what you're saying. An injury is scary on a player, but a player that's previously been a 2,000-yard rusher in multiple, well, not multiple years, but he's been a 2,000-yard rusher and he's been over 1,000 yards in multiple years. I'm willing to take the chance on him at his ADP right now of 14.5.
This is the thing with him though, right? So you've got to look a little bit beyond that. So 2020, his average yards per carry were 5.4 yards. 2019, it was 5.2 yards. The year before that, it was 4.9 yards. You have to go right back to his first or second season when he was a spell back, when he was running around about 4.2, 4.3, 4.4 yards a carry. Last year, even with a big year, his average yards dropped down to 4.3. You know what I mean? So he already took a hit last year in his average yards per carry. And that was before the foot injury. Now, if his yards per carry was to dip below, 4.3 and turn to 4.1, 4 yards, for him to have a 120-yard game, he's going to have to touch the ball 30 times at that kind of average. You know what I mean? Which, as I said before, is his body starting to break down? He broke his foot. You know what I mean? It's now the time when because injuries will cripple your running back room. You know what I mean? That's why I like to throw as many darts as I can, as many late round targets. And if there's someone there like Isaiah Pacheco or Keontae Ingram in the late rounds, you might as well throw a dart at them, because if they see the field, you're going to get production out of them for 1 or 2 weeks. And Derrick Henry, it's such a risk now he's got an injury. I mean, I wouldn't take him in the second round. If he was in the middle of that second round. So if you're in a standard PPR league, I'm guessing Jonathan Taylor will be going first. The upside for McCaffrey's still there. He's going to be going somewhere because he brings so much in the receiving game. Kamara's going to be in there. You're going to have the likes of these. Ekeler's going to be in there. Then you're going to have somebody who's going to take Mark Andrews or Travis Kelce because the tight end pool is very small. Then you're going to have Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. You're telling me, right, if it was the second round and you're picking 5th in the second round and Henry's there in a standard PPR league, not, without quarterbacks flex or anything, you might have the choice between Henry or DeAndre Swift. You know what I mean? You might have the choice between Henry and somebody like I don't know. Just trying to think of a wide receiver. Davante Adams. You know, like you're gonna have you might have a choice between Derrick Henry and Jamal Jefferson, you might have a choice between Derrick Henry and CD Lamb in that range. You know what I mean? Or who's more likely, to play all 17 games? And somebody with a Deebo Samuel, we're going to come on to him next, John. Somebody, who's more likely to play all those games? Personally, if I wouldn't be taking Henry in 2 rounds.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. 10 touchdowns in 8 games. Like, this guy's scoring for you every single game. It's a reliable target. At the middle of the second round, where his current ADP is, I'm gonna take the shot. I get what you're saying about Swift. My only thing about Swift would be he's not the guy you're giving it to on goal and 1. Like, sorry, first and goal, like from the 1. He's not the guy you're giving it there. Whereas Henry is. Henry's the guy that you're giving the ball to punch it in from a yard out. And it's always guaranteed to be scoring you some points because he's scoring touchdowns. And I get what you're saying about he'd have to tot it like 30 times a game to get the yardage, but then it's almost a weekly occurrence that he has one of those rushes where he just bowls through a guy and goes for 70 yards. Like, and even in our league, that's pretty valuable if you've got a guy that can just run for a 70-yard run every now and then when he bowls over a guy. Like, I get what you're saying. He's getting older. It's maybe time to fade him a bit further down, but I think middle of the second is still perfectly reasonable for Derrick Henry, given the player he has been this far. 1 year is not enough to scare me off him.
So I'm on Fantasy Pros, and they've got Derrick Henry as running back 4, number 5 on their board. So around Derrick Henry, you've got Justin Jefferson, you've got Najee Harris, you've got Jamar Chase, you've got Cooper Kupp. You know what I mean? And that's if he go. So they're predicting that he would go in.
But that's not PPR. Round. That's not his PPR ranking. That's his standard ranking. His PPR ranking is RB6. It's further down.
Right. Okay. I'll have to put in that. I'll have to put in on my laptop.
I know on Fantasy Pros it starts on standard, and you have to drop down to either half PPR or PPR to actually get those.
I've got him rankings. On PPR scoring. So yeah, he is. Yeah, you're right. You're right. He drops down on PPR. Oh, that makes a bit more sense, but still, I still wouldn't be taking him in round 2. I'd still take him around him. You've got Joe Mixon, Stephon Diggs, Davante Adams, CD Lamb. We're tempted to take all them ahead of him. Let's move on to the next guy anyway, Bones.
Yeah, not a problem. One question I did have to ask is, in the worst case scenario, would you still have him as like you'd still have him as an RB2 though? You'd still perfectly happily.
It depends what I was playing. If I was playing Dynasty, I'm not taking Henry anywhere near the top end of drafts. I'm thinking you're going to get 1, maybe 2 good years left out of him. And then he's going to be a 30-year-old running back. I'm thinking, if I was in Dynasty, I'd be waiting. Anything beyond round 5 would probably pose good value for him.
If you wanted to win this year, like if you were desperate for it in Dynasty, like I need to win this year, you still wouldn't have him.
If it was like a grand pot and he was there in the 5th round, I'd take him then.
In the 5th round, I don't think in any draft he's going to be there in the 5th round. I think that'd be a miracle.
If I was playing standard PPR, I'd probably take him round 3.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It's not that far off where he's like ADP is that, and that is the average. Some drafts he will drop even further than he tends to, I suppose. In the
dynasty mock I'm playing, he was the 10th pick in the 3rd round.
Yeah. It's quickly worth mentioning the dynasty one you're in has 3 wide receiver slots, 2 quarterbacks, and a flex position. So the wide receiver market in that draft is unreal because everyone needs 3 starters, not just 2 like there is in most leagues.
Yeah, it's a big league. It's like you've got 2 flex positions. One of them's a super flex position. You've got 3 wide receiver spots. You've got 2 running back spots. You've got a tight end spot. Then you've got all your IDP players. It's 30-round drafts.
You've basically got a whole team. Like,
Yeah,
you've basically got an
draft.
actual franchise.
Yeah, you basically, that Dynasty League, you're building a franchise.
Yeah. So you wanted to move on to our next guy. There's some fighting going on in the chat about. Here we go. Gary's thrown out some abuse at John about signed a huge contract after one decent season.
Let's bring this guy up because I've got this guy down as a risk as well. Sorry, John, but I'm going to talk through why I think he's a risk. So Deebo Samuel, I pose as a bit of a risk. One is because he only really had 1 year of production, which is last year. Granted, it was an amazing year of production for him in fantasy. The second thing is he's already signified he doesn't want to be used out the backfield as a running back as much this year. And a lot of his fantasy points, though, came... Oh, John's agreeing with his hang about. Fucking hell. I need to have a drink. A lot of his fantasy points came as a running back. You know, like, and what I've seen, everything from the 49ers training camp is Elijah Mitchell's going to start top of the draft chart. Davis Price is impressed. Trey Sermon has impressed. They've still got Josh Wilson there. You know what I mean? And they've got the run threat of Trey Lance. I just don't know if the production's there for Deebo Samuel as an out-and-out wide receiver. And I don't think they're going to be a pass-first offense as well.
I was going to mention that John's just brought up there were some rushing incentives in his contract. I was going to ask, do you think his bluster about I don't want to be used as a running back is just for contract money, just to get as much money out of the San Francisco 49ers as possible? He deleted his Instagram photos. He's part of that whole new wave of using social media to leverage your team for more money. Like, do you really think he won't do it? Like, it made him a star. It made him a star player last year. Like,
so this is the thing I would say, right? The San Francisco 49ers have just paid him like a wide receiver number one. They've given him a lot of money and they've given him a lot of guarantees. How much is it protecting your investment to have his 190-pound frame or whatever he is as a wide receiver pound the ball 10 times into a 240-pound linebacker? How much are you protecting your investment? Like, and how much are you risking your investment for injury? I think, yes, he will still see running plays, but I don't think he's going to see anywhere near as what he did last year. It just doesn't make business sense. You know what I mean? Though? It doesn't make business sense to pay for a Ferrari and then drive it through a brick wall now, does it?
You'd say about Deebo, it's not that you think he's going to be a bad fantasy player. He's still going to be a good fantasy wide receiver. He's just not going to be where he was last year. And
I don't think he's going to get the production where he was last year. And look, he's wide receiver 10 at the minute. And if we go on, Fantasy Pros, at the moment they've got him down at 16th. You know what I mean, though. Mm. So I mean, around him again, you've got Nick Chubb. You know, if you want to get somebody who can take a pound and get Nick Chubb, you've got CeeDee Lamb, got Tyreek Hill, got Travis Kelce a few points before. You know what I mean, though. And I just don't think that San Francisco are going to be throwing the ball as much as they're going to not want to throw the ball.
Yeah,
I think they're going to be a rush first offense. And if I was picking anybody, I would take CeeDee Lamb above Deebo Samuel. Now, I'm not saying that CeeDee Lamb's a better player than Deebo Samuel. I'm saying in fantasy. You know what I mean? He's in a better situation. He's got Dak Prescott throwing the ball. You know, Amari Cooper's just left the Cowboys. Michael Gallup's injured. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Lamb is going to see a shitload of targets this year. Lots of them.
The problem is Lamb's ADP is 26.8, so around pick 27, and Deebo's is as far back as 31. So you're more likely to have a choice between Deebo and Tyreek Hill in our sort of PPR dynasty rankings.
I'm just looking at the rankings. I'm not quite looking at the ADPs yet. You know what I mean?
Fair enough. So yeah, wide receiver 10. Who is wide? I didn't even check who was wide receiver 11. Who's just behind him on PPR rankings?
So I'll tell you who's just behind him. CeeDee Lamb.
Oh, is he? He's behind him.
Yeah, he's exactly behind him. One place behind him.
Yeah, I also would take CD.
You know, they've just got rid of Amari Cooper. His targets are going to increase. Michael Gallup's injured. I think both Dalton Schultz in CD Lamb, I mean, Dalton Schultz was tight end number 3 last year in fantasy. I think both of them are going to see increases in their workload, at least in targets.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, I do get where you're coming from with Debo, and JP's mentioned it seems like Lance and Ayuk have a pretty good connection so far in training camp, and Debo's 215 pounds officially according to the stats. So, sorry, JP. I mean, I'm inclined to agree. I do think it's probably better to fade it. I would still take him fairly high up, but just not maybe as high, because he's currently going in the 3rd as far as like our dynasty mock would be concerned.
He seems to be going in the 2nd round.
Yeah. I'd still probably want to wait even longer than that, to be honest. Like you say, if it is the choice between him and CD Lamb, I'm taking CD Lamb 100% of the time.
I'm not saying CD Lamb's a better player. I mean, some would argue he is, mind you. But I'm just saying, like, in fantasy, it's all about situations. Mm-hmm. And I just think CD Lamb's in a pass-first offense. Yep. Zeke Elliott's body's breaking down. You know, like, you've already paid Dak Prescott like a superstar. They're going to want to justify the money that they give him in a big contract. He's also a year removed from a nasty ankle injury. You know what I mean? And I just think that CD Lamb's going to have a real massive year. You know, I just think everything's there for CD Lamb to have a brilliant year, you know?
Absolutely agree. I think we've sort of hit it with Debo. I do think his wide receiver 10's maybe a bit high, but I would still, I'd still take him happily as, you know, wide receiver. I'd have him in my team right now, like, but then, you know, like you say, I don't know that he's going to get all the running reps. I get he's got it in his contract, but it's not going to be as much as last year. They are a run-first team, but they've added so much. We know they're going to want to run that sort of 21 personnel, aren't they? And yeah. What about high upside players? Who would be?
Well, have we got any more risks? Let's go through all the risks first, and then we'll go to the high upside. So who was next on the risks? There was 2 running backs who I had as a risk.
Oh, yes, there was. So I believe it was Antonio Gibson out of Washington.
Yeah, played a lot last year with a stress fracture on his shin. You know, like, but that Washington running back room's become really stacked. They took Brian Robinson from Bama in the 3rd round. They're already signifying that he's going to get a lot of the goal line carries.
Right.
Yeah, I just think, again, like, you know, like, I think that this is everything's pointing towards a running back by committee now. And Antonio Gibson, who's got high upside as a pass catcher and as a runner, I think his value is going to diminish because everything points itself. You know, like this is going to be a running back room by committee. You know, like in Gibson had a lot of wear last year. He was spotty and inconsistent. Granted, he played a lot of time with a stress fracture of the shin. But he's another one where I think, do I want to be taking him? Is there a risk that he's going to lose? First of all, goal yard carries. You know what I mean? And also, you know, we've got McKissick there as well, who eats into the 3rd down role and pass catching role. So, you know, is Gibson not going to see the carries that he was seeing? Everything points to it probably not being, you know. Brian Robinson's going to probably take a lot of the goal yard carries, and that's going to take a lot of the touchdowns out of Gibson's hands. I do think you'll see a lot of Gibson between the 20s. You know, like, and I think you'll see McKissick in the passing downs. But I think once you're in the red zone, I think you're going to see a lot of Brian Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a concern that he's already tagged as questionable going into the season. Like, I you know, it's tricky, but the team does, like you say, the team does seem poised to very easily just not give him the carries that he needs. He's going to have a bit of a reduced role. Yeah,
I've got him in the Commanders in general. I've got him in our Dynasty League. You know what I mean, though? I've got him. Took him in the 3rd or 4th round last year.
Keeping him or cutting him?
Hey?
You're going to keep him, though, I imagine. And
yeah, I'm going to keep him. You know what I mean? Because, he, like I said, I still think he's going to I still think he's going to have some. I just think he's going to be very inconsistent. I think it's going to be hard to predict when his big weeks are going to come.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't love the Commanders situation. Like you were saying before, a lot of fantasy is about situations. Just not sure I love the situation he's in.
The only player from the Commanders who I feel safe about this situation is Terry McLaurin. You know, like Terry McLaurin produces with no matter who's a quarterback. He seems to be quarterback proof. And I would probably argue that Carson Wentz, even though Carson Wentz is rubbish, it's probably the best quarterback situation Terry McLaurin's found himself in.
That's a sad state of affairs for Terry McLaurin's career. Yeah.
But that's probably Carson Wentz. I mean, Haskins, you know, like Heineke. I mean, Fitzpatrick never played a game last year for them. You know what I mean? But Washington have had some terrible quarterback situations. And McLaurin still produced as a top 15 wide receiver. Like, he seems to be quarterback proof. He's the only one that I would feel safe about taking at the Commanders is Terry McLaurin.
That's fair enough. I was just trying to see Terry McLaurin, wide receiver, 25, 60th pick overall average.
I would move him up the board. He's quarterback. He's proven to be quarterback proof. He's got 1,000 yards with worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah. PPR standard 24th, PPR 25th overall. So yeah, wide receiver.
Apart from Terry McLaurin, I wouldn't be touching anybody else on the Washington Commanders team. There's Bones gone. Oh, this is embarrassing. Just lost me presenter. So
I'm back already. Sorry. Sorry. Don't know what happened then. I lost connection briefly. Yeah. Gibson. So Gibson, you would fade this year. Who's around him in round? So running back that goes before, just a couple picks before him, Travis Etienne, and Josh Jacobs is just behind him. You take Jacobs over him?
No, again, I'd probably fade. He's going into a committee backfield. I tell you who I would take, and we'll go for a player who's got upside, and we'll transition from Gibson into this guy.
Okay.
I tell you who I would take above Gibson, and he's probably ADP's probably rounds behind Gibson, but this is the guy I would take instead of Gibson. Chase Edmonds.
Yeah, Chase Edmonds.
Chase Edmonds, people will see when he's went into a packed Miami backfield. Chase Edmonds was paid like a number one running back this year. He was given £6 million a year over a 2-year contract. The thing that I really like is that Miami fought off the Buffalo Bills to get Chase Edmonds. That tells me that they really wanted him. There was a battle for him, and Miami paid to get him. That tells you how much they value Chase Edmonds. Chase Edmonds was terrific behind James Conner last year. In fact, Chase Edmonds actually did all the donkey work last year.
Yeah.
It was James Conner who got the touchdowns, but Chase Edmonds was doing all the backfield catching. He was doing all the running on early downs. Just, like James Conner came in the red zone and got the touchdowns, which is why he had a big season.
Yeah.
But yeah, Chase Edmonds is the guy I would take if I was faced with the dilemma of Antonio Gibson, or do I take somebody else instead of Antonio Gibson? Like, I don't know what wide receiver might be there at the time. Hunter Renfrow. You know, you could maybe get Darren Waller at tight end there. You know, you could maybe get somebody like Mike Williams at the Chargers there. I would sooner take Mike Williams and then wait around and get Chase Edmonds, or take Hunter Renfrow, wait around and get Chase Edmonds, or take Darren Waller and wait around and get Chase Edmonds. Yeah. You know, like that's fantasy, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's about what value you can get at what point, you know?
Yeah, you'll get Chase Edmonds a lot later than that. Like, I was going to mention that there was another guy who you like who's even closer in draft position that I also think you would take over Antonio Gibson right now, but we are going to talk about him soon, so we'll wait on that one.
Okay. Yeah, well, Chase Edmonds is a sleeper. I think where he's going, I would be tempted to take him earlier. You know, like I think he lands himself in a good situation. I think he's been paid like they want him to be running back number one. He can catch the ball. He hasn't got a lot of wear on his tires. And yeah, he done well last year when he was asked to do well for the Arizona Cardinals.
Do you think Miami are going to be actually looking to run the ball that much with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle as the wide receivers?
Look, they come from the head coach comes from the Shanahan tree. You know what I mean? I think they are going to run the ball. I don't think they're going to be a run-first offense. But Chase Edmonds is great as a receiver as well, let's not forget. You line him out in the backfield and put him into the slot. He's one of the better wide receiver, one of the better receiving running backs in the NFL.
Okay. I mean, that's fair enough. They do. They also did sign Raheem Mostert and Sony Michel as the people behind him.
They've got Myles Gaskin. You know what I mean? So they've got a lot of players there. But I would be having a punt on Chase Edmonds, a couple of rounds later, 3 rounds later, or whatever it is.
In fantasy, he's going at, or at least in our Dynasty Fantasy mock, sort of the rankings, the ADP on there, he's going at like 112, 113. That's how late he's going. Like the tail end of round 11, you'll get him at current ADP. So like that,
in round 11. God, I would be happy to take him in round 9.
Like the tail end of round 11 ish, according to Sleeper for Dynasty rankings in full PPR. Yeah, that's where they've got him, and I agree for how far down he is. Like he's listed as an RB1 on the depth chart. That's late for an RB1. Like Rashad Penny is a couple picks ahead of him in Seattle. I would rather have Chase Edmonds than any Seattle player this season.
Yeah. He signed a 2-year contract for nearly $13 million. He's being paid like a starting running back. Everything signifies they want him to be their starting running back. Yeah. I know they've got Mostert. I know Mostert's got breakaway speed, but I don't think that Edmonds is going to be the first guy up in that team.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, do you want to move on to the next downside, the last of your downside players, or do you want to come back around to another upside?
Let's go to the last downside player.
Okay. That was Chris Godwin of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers still, I assume?
Chris Godwin of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Currently wide receiver 28, probably going, I've seen him go as early as 3rd round, but he's going around that 3rd, 4th round place. I'm not a big fan of Godwin's situation this year. He had a nasty injury last year. Mm-hmm. He's going into a situation where you've still got Mike Evans. Yes, Gronkowski's gone, but they've got Russell Gage. All reports coming out of training camp is that they've not been able to cover Russell Gage. You know what I mean? Like Russell Gage is meant to, Tom Brady's meant to be loving him. You know, like he's meant to be uncoverable, I reckon. I know it's training camp, but they've just signed Julio Jones and he's had an injury and they're talking about him not being back for the first week. He's going to miss a game already. Like Chris Godwin is somebody who's on my buyer beware list as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I can get behind that. Like you say, they've got a talented young player behind him. He has not been healthy the last year. I get, like you said, Gronk is gone, but from everything I've read, like it seems people expect if Julio plays long enough, him to eat up a lot of the routes that Gronk was running, like because it's the sort of route he can still run without falling apart.
Look, I mean, I'm looking at it here on the rankings I'm just looking at the rank that they have them. They have Chris Godwin at 54. They have Brandon Cooks, who's a bona fide wide receiver 1 in Houston, in a team that's going to be playing from behind a lot. So they're going to be passing the ball a lot. He's 50. He's one spot ahead of him. You've got Mike Williams, who's around that range. He's 2 spots away from Chris Godwin. Mike Williams is going into a frigging great situation. Yeah. He's got Justin Herbert, who's in the MVP race. He's just signed a new contract. You've got Keenan Allen, who's starting to get older. Mike Williams is in a terrific situation. I know he had a breakout last year and we saw how good he was at the start in fantasy. Mike Williams is wide receiver 19. Like, that's way too low for me this year,
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said.
The one I'm looking at, they've got Godwin as wide receiver 21.
Yeah, so... Yeah, I think he's a bit higher in standard than PPR, isn't he? I was just trying to find him quickly. God, he's so far down in Dynasty. No one wants him. But yeah, like you say, he's injured. Talented rookie behind him. not rookie, younger player, not injured. And it just seems to be a situation where is he not going to come back in and get the reps immediately? Yeah. So wide receiver 16.
That's the thing, Mike Bones. You've got to look at what you can get. You've got to bracket, right? If I'm taking Chris Godwin in the round that he's going in, it's then like, well, who am I getting in the later round? Whereas I could take somebody like Mike Williams instead of Chris Godwin.
Yep.
And then about 5 rounds later, I take Russell Gage. If I want to tap a wide receiver that badly, I'll get one 5 rounds later in Russell Gage.
Chris Godwin's not played a full season since 2018 either.
Can you tell me definitely, hand on, would you put money on it, saying that Chris Godwin will have more receiving yards than Russell Gage this year?
No, I wouldn't put money on it at all.
Would you keep one 5 rounds higher than the other?
No.
Would you be surprised if Russell Gage had more receiving yards than Chris Godwin this year?
No, probably not. No, not at all. Because, like I say, Godwin's not played a full season in 4 years nearly now. Like, there's just no way. Like, I get that Gage is marked as behind him on the depth chart, but if it was a choice between the two, I'd take the stab. I would take the stab on Gage in a draft. I'd go grab him instead immediately.
You could get Russell Gage 5 rounds later, and you get Mike Williams.
Yeah.
Instead of Godwin.
How much high up he's going? Jeez. It's crazy. It's just, I think he had an okay last year. I don't even think his stats look amazing last year either. Like, he barely broke 1,000 yards. And he still managed to, I don't know, overrated, definitely, I agree. And
I would get Mike Williams instead of Godwin and then come back 5 rounds later and get Russell Gage.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then, genuinely, I'm trying to find him in the fantasy in the dynasty one to see how far up he actually is in ADP, but I'm either missing him or he's further down than I thought in dynasty. I keep saying fantasy instead of dynasty. No, Godwin, there he is. ADP 77 in dynasty, so a bit further down, but behind him is Amon-Ra St. Brown, who I personally would rather take a chance on. Just ahead of him, Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, and people like Darnell Mooney.
Yeah.
Like Cortland Sutton.
Yep. Rashad Bateman's just behind him. Juju Smith-Schuster. I know Juju's not had a great many years recently, but I would take a stab on Juju over Chris Godwin right now, personally, going into that Kansas offense.
Before all Chris Godwin fans, noose themselves, let's go on to something positive. Give us a wide receiver who I like, who I've got upside for.
Okay. Do you know what? There's one that isn't on the list that I wanted to bring up because of some news that came up the other day. So I've not got his ADP to hand, sadly, because I didn't actually think. I thought about it last minute. Tim Patrick's gone down. What does this mean for one of your other favourites, Cortland Sutton?
Oh, yeah. I'm backing on Cortland Sutton over Jerry Jeudy. Like, I know everyone's going mental about Jerry Jeudy, and Jerry Jeudy seems to be drafted really high, and everyone's backing him to have a breakout because Russell Wilson's in town. But I think people are backing the wrong wide receiver. I would be piling stock into Cortland Sutton.
So currently, Sutton's ranked wide receiver 44 in PPR, 47 in standard, and his ADP is in Dynasty is 74. So it's one behind Jerry Jeudy. They're right next to each other in ADP. Yeah,
I would be taking Cortland Sutton.
Yeah.
I just think that Jerry Jeudy, we've already seen him struggle with drops. I've been watching training camp videos and he's dropping balls all over the place. I know I saw this from Jamar Chase last year as well, mind you. You know what I mean? But I just think...
when he forgot how to catch footballs. I remember that.
Sutton's got 1,000-yard season behind him already as well with bloody Drew Lock.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So what's he going to be like with Russell Wilson? I just think that Cortland Sutton's the guy that you should be picking up that wide receiver room.
Especially now that Tim Patrick injuries happened, because who did they have behind Tim Patrick initially? KJ Hamler?
KJ Hamler?
Yeah, I think that's.
I do think that the tight end there could do quite well as well. But I do think that Cortland Sutton's going to have a big year with Russell Wilson. Like when I say big year, I mean over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns.
Oh, I cannot pronounce that tight end name. Do you know how?
I can't pronounce it. Okowengwu.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm Albert.
Albert
his first name's Albert. Yeah, Albert O.
To call him,
yeah. I'm not going to attempt it. I know I'm going to absolutely butcher it, but yeah, I get that. You know, Russell Wilson likes a big body, doesn't he? So a tight end's a good shout for someone who's going to eat in that offense.
Cortland Sutton, somebody I would be going for.
Fair enough. Yeah, I thought I'd bring him up because it was a bit of it was one we hadn't talked about, and yeah. So in terms of going back to sleepers and upside,
I'm buying as much stock of Mike Williams and Cortland Sutton as I can get.
Yeah.
And as much stock of Chase Edmonds and late stock of Russell Gage. You know what I mean?
So what about a really deep sleeper that's going later than all these guys in Marvin Jones Jr., ranked wide receiver 62 in PPR, up where he is standard, because I should have kept them both really, but I'm going to imagine he's also still quite far down.
Yeah, he's miles down. He's going like round 10, beyond. Sometimes I'm seeing people take a flyer on him at the very last pick of the draft.
Wow.
Marvin Jones is in a really good situation. Marvin Jones got nearly 900 yards last year.
Yeah.
You know, like in a really bad offense. You know, like in this year, his offense has even got better. And Trevor Lawrence is a year gone. And, you know, like Doug Pederson's making the calls. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I just think Trevor Lawrence already trusts him. Trusted him enough last year to throw him for nearly 900 yards. He's 32. He's a vet. He can get open. He's a downfield threat. Mm-hmm. Bigger body. Everyone's jumping on the Christian Kirk train because of the money he got given. You know what I mean? If I was looking at wide receiver 1 in the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm still thinking it's Marvin Jones, and I still think he's going to have the biggest year out of them.
Yeah, and would it be different if you were looking at it from the dynasty's perspective?
If I was dynasty, I wouldn't even consider him unless I was in a win-now window. He's 32 and on the tail end of his career. But in PPR, you know what I mean? No, I'm thinking he can get 8 catches a game. He'll go off the odd time for 100 yards. I would definitely be taking him in best ball.
Yeah. I mean, especially at the ADP you can get him at, like as late as he's going, like as wide receiver 62 in PPR. Like, you can hold out on getting him.
We haven't done our best ball mock yet, and you're in my best ball league. So now I know that I'm going to have to take Marvin Jones at least 3 rounds higher to get him. Because I know that you're going to be all over him, after I've now just highlighted him to you for being an ex-Lion as well.
If I can leave him as late as he's going till basically the end of the draft, yeah, I might be willing to take a stab on someone.
No, you won't. You're going to jump up and take him 5 rounds earlier now.
Oh, we'll see about that. It depends. I don't know what the other guys in this best ball league are going to be. What they're going to be like. What kind of if they're all fantasy sharks like you, and they're all here to hustle me, and I'm
James in there. James Proctor's in there.
All right, so there's your championship match, and I'll be just like, hi, I've got a team.
Yeah, James Proctor's in there. Ryan's in there from all the league. You know, there's some guys in there who know their shit.
Yeah, and like I say, if you can get him that late, then why not? Like you say, he's probably going to be at the very least wide receiver 2 on that team. He's probably not going lower than that based on the depth chart right now. And yeah, I mean, he is a deep threat.
Would you be surprised if he led the Jaguars? If I was saying to you, yes, £10, who do you think is going to have the most receiving yards for the Jaguars now? Who would you put your £10 on?
I'm a sucker for the reports. Everything says Christian Kirk is going to be is having quite a good time with Trevor Lawrence, and I do think he's probably going to have more yards. But at the ADP you can get Marvin Jones at, I think it's daft to not take a shot on a wide receiver 2 that you can get in the last round of the draft. Like, that is not bad value for a second receiver on a team at all.
I tell you what, then, you know, like Chase Claypool's probably going about bloody 5 rounds higher than him.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I'd take him over Chase Claypool right now because his situation is not looking good.
Mitch Trubisky throwing on the ball.
No, Mitch Trubisky throwing no one the ball by all accounts in training camp. Of what was it? We saw what was it today? 3 completions in training camp. Mason Rudolph
14 passes.
Yep. Mason Rudolph thinks he's going to be a starter for some reason, even though they drafted Pickett.
I still think he's going to turn into Steve Young.
I think Pickett's going to just take over almost immediately, and neither Rudolph nor Trubisky is going to see the field unless Pickett hurts himself.
Have we got any more mock sleepers, or going into?
We've got.
I think could splash.
We had one more fade actually. That was. I think it's a fade. I think it ended up being a fade. It's J.K. Dobbins out of Baltimore.
Massive fade.
24.
Yeah, massive fade. I'm massively fading on J.K. Dobbins. Huge fade.
He's already on the pup, isn't he?
Yeah, he's still on the pup. I'm not convinced he's going to be back fully fit. How bad that injury was. I know he's young, but I think his next good year is going to be next year. I'd probably still take him on Dynasty. I'd want someone like Chase Edmonds on my squad if I can start now. And I'll be quite happy sitting on J.K. Dobbins. But yeah, big fade for me, J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah,
big fade.
Even though it's the run first Baltimore offense and
big fade.
Gus Edwards is also on the pup. Do Baltimore have any running backs?
Davis.
Okay, I was going to say, do they have any running backs left?
We've got Mike Davis, who was signed from Atlanta.
I feel like this is a repeat of last year for Baltimore, where the season hasn't even started and half the running back room are already dead.
Well, they were both injured last year. They're still recovering from last year's injuries.
Oh, is it a carryover from last year?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, they've got the rookie Tyler Badie as well, I suppose, which is a great name if I've pronounced that right. Badie.
Tyler Badie running the ball.
Yeah. 5'8", 197. Oh, he's not a bruiser or anything though, is he? At 5'8", 197.
A little cannonball.
Yeah, I guess so. He's got a decent number of receptions as well. You could take a flyer on Tyler Badie. Looking at the Baltimore's running back room right now, he might be starting sooner than they expected.
See, they're the kind of picks that I make at the end of the draft. Where I just go, fuck it, I'm just going to throw a dart at running backs. Isaiah Pacheco, Keontae Ingram, from Eno Benjamin. All these guys, who are going to be number 2 on the depth chart. But in good situations, James Conner could theoretically get injured at any point. He's been injured in the past. Mm-hmm. Who's next up? Is it going to be Keontae Ingram? Is it going to be Eno Benjamin? You know what I mean? But if one of them goes in, this is why I don't overdraft running backs, because I'll just get shitloads of number 2s at the end of the season, at the end of the draft, and think one of them's going to play 4 or 5 games.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with a lot of teams, especially now, and running back rooms being more often than not running back by committee. Yeah, it's never a bad shout to have a couple of options, especially if you can store them when they're young, like you're doing in your dynasty one. You can store 3 of them on your taxi squad.
Stick them on your taxi squad. I'm going to put 3. I'm putting 3 rookie running backs on my taxi squad in Dynasty. And look, if one of them breaks through, I'm not bothered. I'm like, great. You know what I mean? Yeah. No, there's a 5-year starter for us in Dynasty at running back. If one of them breaks through,
That's the beauty of your taxi squad, isn't it? It's there. It's useful for if someone gets hurt and a rookie ends up coming in and starting, and you can bring them up off it, or just wait the whole year. And if they pop, you're like, right, you're in the starters next year. Fantastic. Yeah. And just cut everyone else and not worry about it. It's a useful thing in Dynasty to just have to keep an eye on people. So what, in terms of rookies, I don't know that I have any marked for what the PPRs and stuff are, but I'm sure I can find it quickly enough. What rookies did you have on your eye on in terms of that you think you would take a stab on this year?
I would
because not all leagues are dynasty, are they? So some leagues rookies fall down way more than they do in our dynasty league.
Well, in standard leagues, I would take Breece Hall quite high. I would certainly take Breece Hall ahead of Antonio Gibson, who we mentioned earlier on.
Yeah,
like Breece Hall, but they wanted to take him in the first round, man. But they got him in round 2. You know what I mean? And he was unbelievable at Iowa.
Yeah.
You know, like this guy is going to be a 3-down back, and they've got Michael Carter there. But I don't think it will be long until we see Breece Hall being the bell cow back for the Jets. They're meant to love him. And he's a good player.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they not love him? I would be taking Breece Hall quite early. I would definitely be taking him early in Dynasty.
Yeah.
I think Tom's got our first pick in our Dynasty league.
Oh, yeah, he's guaranteed to be picking Breece Hall. 100%.
Breece Hall because it's a rookie's draft, isn't it? Because we've all been going a few years now. So we've been going into our second year. So Breece Hall's going number 1. And that, like, I think he just goes into a good situation. Don't be scared to take a running back on a bad team. And I don't think that the Jets are going to be as bad as everybody anticipates this year. I think they've improved across the board. And that offensive line's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think Breece Hall's going into a better situation than Kenneth Walker is, for example. Like, yeah. Much sooner and much happier to draft Breece Hall than Kenneth Walker for sure. Seahawks taking a bit of a bashing, but I don't like anything about it this year. I really don't want any Seahawks this year at all. I'm avoiding them like the plague.
Yeah. I tell you another player who I would take a flyer on higher than he's good, Chris Olave.
Oh yeah.
I think he might be the best wide receiver in fantasy for the players. I think Drake London's in a really poor situation. I think Wilson's got enough question marks around him because you've got Zach Wilson throwing the ball, and we don't know what Zach Wilson is yet. I don't think that the Jets are going to want to run the ball primarily more to ease the pressure of Zach Wilson. So I'm not taking Gabriel Wilson. I would take Chris Olave though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think he's potentially could be wide receiver 1 at the Saints.
I mean,
he's fast. He can win at all 3 levels. He runs really good routes. People said he was like the cleanest prospect in the draft out of the wide receiver room.
And the only people he's really competing with are an aging Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry. And like you said, Chris Olave is almost the perfect target for Jameis Winston in this New Orleans offense. Like he's going to put the ball up there somewhere, and Olave's going to be able to go and I've lost Mark now. Olave is going to be able to go and get it, is what I was going to say. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree on that one for when he does come back. Especially in rookie-only drafts, there's a couple that go ahead of him that I'd agree I probably wouldn't take a stab on. Well, Mark's not coming back as quickly as I did. Well, whilst we wait, if anyone does want to ask anything, by all means. But we'll see. We'll see when he comes back. His laptop battery died. Rookie mistake. Rookie error. All right. Yeah. Well, I guess in that case, as Mark's laptop has died and Olave was the last person we were going to discuss anyway, I'll wrap it up on my own, and I'll say goodbye from me and goodbye from Mark, who's already had to go due to a battery failure. And yeah, have a real good night. I hope you enjoyed the fantasy talk. I hope you enjoyed the fades, the high upside players, and we'll keep doing more fantasy shows. Hopefully we'll have something different each week, something interesting for you all to listen to. And yeah, absolutely fantastic. Thank you for coming. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe, the usual YouTube things, and have a real good